In every culture, insects carry messages beyond what the eyes can see. Some bring harmony, but others are signals of hidden darkness. When certain insects repeatedly cross your path, it is not coincidence. It is a sign, a spiritual alarm bell warning you that witchcraft or negative energy has entered your life. Today I will reveal 10 insects that act as silent messengers, guiding you to protect your spirit, your home, and your peace. When we speak about insects, most people see them as nothing more than small creatures crawling or flying around us, often dismissed as insignificant. But the truth is, nature never places anything in our path without meaning. Every living being carries a language, a vibration, and a purpose. Insects in particular have always been viewed as powerful messengers. Across different cultures and traditions, they were never seen as random. They were seen as signals, whispers from the unseen world, guiding us if we were wise enough to pay attention. Think about it for a moment. Why is it that certain insects appear in times of peace, while others suddenly invade spaces when tension, anger, or negative energy is present? Why is it that in times of spiritual warfare, the most ordinary things in nature suddenly begin to act in extraordinary ways? This is not accident. It is the hidden language of insects. Their presence, their patterns, their timing, all of it speaks to something deeper, something spiritual. In ancient traditions, shamans and spiritual leaders would often interpret the arrival of certain insects as direct signs. Some insects meant prosperity was near, that the land was fertile and blessings were coming. But others meant the opposite. They carried with them a warning, a disturbance, a reminder that dark forces were moving in silence. Even the smallest insect, the ones you might be tempted to brush off or kill without thought, could be carrying a message you desperately need to hear. You see, insects are sensitive to energy in a way that humans are not. They pick up vibrations that we cannot see, just as a bird can sense a storm before it arrives, or a dog can sense fear in a person without a word being spoken. Insects can feel when the energy in a space is shifted, manipulated, or corrupted, and because of this, they reveal to us what is hidden. Their sudden appearance in places where they do not belong is often the first sign that something unnatural has entered your life. Many people ignore these signs. They swat the fly, they crush the beetle, they brush away the moth, never stopping to wonder why it appeared in the first place. But those who are awake, those who are connected to their inner awareness, begin to notice. They see the patterns. They realize that insects do not just arrive without cause, they are drawn, either by nature's balance or by the disturbance of witchcraft, and in this awareness they find protection. Imagine your home as a sacred space, a place of balance and peace. When this balance is disturbed, you may not see the darkness immediately. Witchcraft rarely announces itself loudly. It moves quietly, hidden, disguised. But insects, they cannot hide what they sense. They will come in unusual numbers, in strange hours, or in places they have no natural reason to be. This is the universe's way of speaking to you, warning you before greater harm can manifest. If you look back into history, you will find countless references where insects were tied to omens. Locusts, for instance, were seen not just as destroyers of crops, but as signs of divine judgment. Moths, entering homes at night, were seen as spirits of unrest carrying messages of unseen interference. Ants, appearing suddenly in great numbers inside a home, were thought to signal hidden conflicts or the presence of energies trying to break harmony. These patterns were never ignored by the wise. They were studied, respected, and understood. Today many people laugh at such beliefs. They call it superstition. They say, it's just a bug, it doesn't mean anything. But what happens when logic fails to explain why certain insects appear in unnatural ways? Why does a swarm suddenly fill a single room? Why do you see the same insect every day at the same time, as though it is watching? Why do they enter only certain spaces, never others? This is not random. This is language. The language of energy. When you begin to understand that insects can be carriers of spiritual messages, your eyes will open to a hidden dimension of awareness. You will no longer live blind to the warnings that life places in front of you. You will start to realize that the smallest details, the buzz of a fly, the crawl of a spider, the sudden invasion of insects in the night, are not just irritations, but invitations to wake up, to protect yourself, to cleanse your space, to pay attention. Those who walk the path of awareness know that silence is often where the truth hides. Insects may not speak with words, but they communicate loudly in the language of presence. They come when the balance is off. They come when the energy shifts. They come as early messengers, giving you time to prepare, to guard, to protect what matters most. Never dismiss what seems small. Often it is the small signs that carry the greatest warnings. The hidden language of insects is not meant to scare you. It is meant to awaken you, to remind you that protection begins with awareness. And once you begin to listen, truly listen, you will never look at their presence the same way again. When you begin to notice insects showing up in your life in ways that feel unusual, it is important to pause and reflect. The natural world follows rhythm, order, and balance. Insects belong to that order. Ants build their colonies underground. Flies are attracted to waste, moths seek out light, and beetles move through the soil. This is their nature. But when you see them outside of their ordinary patterns, when their presence feels excessive, invasive, or unnaturally timed, that is when you must pay attention. Because unnatural presence often carries with it a spiritual message, and in many cases, it points directly toward witchcraft or hidden negative intentions being directed into your life. Witchcraft rarely reveals itself openly. It doesn't walk through the front door and announce its arrival. Instead, it moves quietly, weaving itself into the background, looking for ways to disturb you without being noticed. And nature, in its wisdom, responds to this disturbance. Insects are one of the first responders to such shifts. They are drawn to the vibration of imbalance. And when that imbalance is not from natural causes, when it is created by manipulation of energies, their presence becomes a signal. Think of it this way: if your home is clean, peaceful, and filled with harmony, but suddenly you find swarms of flies appearing with no explanation, you must ask yourself, why now? If you wake in the night to find beetles, moths, or roaches crawling into rooms where they have never been before, ask yourself, what has changed in the energy of this space? When witchcraft is at work, it disturbs the natural flow, and insects react to that disturbance. They do not hide it. They make it visible for those who are willing to see. The danger is that many people dismiss it. They tell themselves, it's just the season, it's just coincidence, it's nothing. And yet deep inside, they feel something is off, the timing is wrong, the numbers are unnatural, the pattern is too persistent. This is how witchcraft hides. It convinces you to ignore the signs until the damage is already done. But those who remain alert know that insects appearing out of their natural context are not random. They are warnings. Consider how often people report insects showing up when they feel spiritually attacked. Someone who has never struggled with infestations suddenly finds their home invaded by moths at night, each one circling the same space as though guarding it. Or a person notices ants forming lines into their bedroom, a place where no food has been placed. These are not coincidences. They are physical manifestations of an unseen conflict, and the insects become unwilling carriers of that message. In many traditions, there is deep respect for this. People would cleanse their homes not just physically, but spiritually whenever insects appeared in strange numbers. They would burn incense, sprinkle salt, recite prayers, or create protective boundaries, not because they feared the insects, but because they understood what the insects were pointing toward. They saw them as messengers revealing what human eyes could not. When witchcraft enters your life, it often comes with intent to weaken, to drain, to disturb your peace. But energy cannot remain hidden forever. It leaves traces. It pulls nature into its current. The insects are pulled into this current, and their unnatural presence exposes the hand that tries to remain unseen. That is why you must train yourself to observe, not just with your eyes but with your spirit. Ask why. Question what is happening around you. Do not ignore the unusual. You may even notice that these insects appear in cycles, as though testing you. At times when you feel emotionally weak, suddenly the presence of strange insects becomes stronger. At times when you begin to pray, to meditate, or to reclaim your energy, they may appear again, trying to unsettle you. This is not only physical, it is spiritual resistance, and the insects become signs that the unseen is pressing closer, trying to disrupt your path. The awareness of this does not mean living in fear. Fear gives power to what seeks to harm you. Awareness means you understand, you acknowledge the warning, and you prepare yourself. You recognize that unnatural presence is never to be ignored. You take action to cleanse, to realign, to protect your space. In this way, insects become not enemies, but allies, silent allies exposing what would otherwise remain invisible. So the next time you notice insects arriving in unusual ways, do not dismiss it as chance. Look deeper, listen to the message. They may be pointing you toward the reality that witchcraft is being directed against you. And if you are wise, you will act before the damage is done. The unnatural presence of insects is never without meaning. It is the shadow revealing itself through nature's smallest messengers. Energy is something we cannot see with our physical eyes, but we feel it every day. We know when a room carries peace, and we know when it carries tension. We sense when someone walks in with anger, even if they do not say a single word. Energy is invisible, but it is powerful. It shapes the atmosphere, it influences the body, and it touches the spirit. And just as we can feel these shifts, so too can insects. In fact, they are even more sensitive to these changes than we are, because their very survival depends on vibration, movement, and flow. When witchcraft enters your life, when negative energy is directed toward you, insects often become the first signs that the balance around you has been disturbed. Witchcraft works by manipulating energy. It bends what is natural into something unnatural, twisting intentions into forms that carry harm. When this distortion is present, it does not remain silent. It ripples out, just as a stone thrown into water creates circles that spread wider and wider. These ripples affect not only you, but also the environment around you. The plants, the air, the atmosphere, and yes, the insects. They all respond to these ripples. They feel the disruption and are drawn into it. What you may see as a sudden annoyance of flies, moths, or beetles is in truth a sign that energy is not as it should be. Think about how insects behave naturally. Bees move toward flowers because of nectar. Flies are attracted to decay. Moths search for light. But when they begin appearing where there is no reason for them to be, when they show up repeatedly without explanation, they are not following their natural instincts anymore. They are following disturbed energy. It is as though they are pulled into the imbalance that witchcraft creates. Their movement is no longer random. It becomes a reflection of the unseen war being fought in your surroundings. Many people underestimate how deeply energy shapes the physical world. When you are joyful, your body feels light, you walk differently, your words carry power. When you are heavy with stress, even your health begins to decline. If human beings are affected in such visible ways, imagine how insects, creatures so finely tuned to vibration, respond when the very air is altered by dark practices. They sense it, they react to it, and they often gather where that distortion is strongest. This is why, in times of spiritual attack, you may notice insects appearing in specific spaces again and again. Perhaps it is always in one room of your home, or always around your bed, or always at your door. They are being pulled toward the disturbance that witchcraft has created. Their presence is not coincidence. It is a mirror of the hidden conflict pressing into your life. But here is the deeper truth: insects are not only indicators of disturbance, they are also reminders. They remind you that what is unseen is just as real as what you can touch. They remind you to remain awake, to be mindful, to take notice of what others might ignore. In a world that teaches us to trust only what we see, these small creatures force us to acknowledge the reality of energy, both positive and negative. They tell us that the unseen is active, and that awareness is your first line of defense. If you have ever walked into a space and immediately felt uncomfortable, even without knowing why, you have already experienced this principle. Now imagine how much stronger that effect becomes when witchcraft deliberately disturbs the balance. You may feel restless, uneasy, or drained, but the insects show it outwardly. They gather, they appear, they make the disturbance visible. They cannot hide what they sense, and that is why their presence becomes so valuable to those who pay attention. Some may choose to ignore it, thinking it is only a nuisance. But ignoring these signs is like ignoring the warning sound of an alarm. The insects are not there without reason. They are responding to energy that has been corrupted, energy that is trying to enter your life unnoticed. And if you are wise, you will not swat them away without thought. You will pause and ask, what is this telling me? What is out of balance? Where is this energy coming from? And how must I protect myself? Energy disturbance is not something you can see with your eyes, but it always leaves a mark. And when it comes in the form of witchcraft, insects are often the first to show you what has been disturbed. Their sudden presence is not an accident, it is a message. When insects appear where they do not belong, they are not just interrupting your peace. They are revealing the energy that already has. From the beginning of human history, our ancestors understood that nature speaks, and they paid attention to its voice. Insects, though small, were never ignored. They were seen as carriers of messages, signs that the unseen world was trying to communicate with those who were willing to listen. Across cultures, across time, people believed that the sudden appearance of certain insects was not random. It was a warning. It was a way for ancestors, spirits, or the universe itself to alert us when danger was near, when witchcraft or harmful intentions were creeping silently into our lives. If you look back into old traditions, you will find stories of insects tied to omens. Some were seen as blessings, like the butterfly representing transformation or the bee symbolizing prosperity. but others carried darker meanings. The presence of moths inside a home at night, for example, was believed to mean that unrest or bad energy had entered. Beetles crawling in sacred spaces were thought to bring warnings from the unseen. Even the sudden invasion of ants indoors was taken seriously, not only as a sign of imbalance in the physical environment, but also as a symbol of hidden conflict trying to disrupt harmony. For our ancestors, these were not superstitions. They were survival codes passed down from one generation to another. You see, the world was once viewed not as separate, physical on one side, spiritual on the other, but as one. Everything was connected: the wind, the rain, the animals, the insects. Each movement had a meaning. When witchcraft entered a village or a household, people did not wait until destruction appeared openly. They read the signs early. They noticed when insects began acting strangely, when they came in numbers that felt unnatural, when they appeared in spaces they did not belong. This was their way of knowing that something was wrong, that dark energy was pressing against their boundaries. Even today, in many parts of the world, people still hold on to this knowledge. In rural communities, elders will tell you that when too many insects appear suddenly, it means the spirit world is restless. Some will say that the ancestors are trying to get your attention, to wake you up before harm becomes worse. Others believe it is a direct sign that witchcraft has been aimed at you, and that the insects are messengers caught between two worlds, the natural and the spiritual. What is important to understand is that these beliefs were never about fear of insects themselves. They were about respect for the message they carried. Our ancestors did not see the fly, the beetle, the moth, or the ant as random pests. They saw them as instruments through which the unseen world spoke, and because they listened, they were able to prepare, to protect, to take action before negative forces could fully root themselves in their lives. The modern world has taught many people to laugh at such things, to call them old stories, to dismiss them as superstition. But what happens when logic cannot explain why insects show up in unnatural ways? Why they seem to gather around certain people or certain homes with no explanation? Why they vanish when peace is restored, but multiply when tension and darkness grow stronger? Science may give one explanation, but the deeper truth remains. Nature mirrors what is happening in the unseen, and insects, more than most creatures, reveal it first. When you see them, when you notice their unusual patterns, you must remember that your ancestors saw them not just as bugs but as guardians. Guardians who came to deliver a message. The message is simple: pay attention. Something is not right, something hidden is moving in your space. If you ignore it, you risk being caught unprepared. But if you listen, you step into the same wisdom that protected generations before you. Witchcraft may change in form, but it has always moved in the same way, quietly, secretly, aiming to disturb without being seen. And throughout history, insects have been the ones to break that silence, to betray the hidden hand by showing up in ways that cannot be ignored. When you recognize this, you begin to understand why your ancestors gave meaning to their presence. They were not just dealing with insects. They were dealing with signs, with warnings, with guidance meant to protect the living from the forces of darkness. So when these small messengers appear in your life, remember the wisdom of those who came before you. Do not see them as random. Do not see them as meaningless. See them as the voice of the unseen, carried through wings and legs, reminding you to awaken, to protect, and to guard what is sacred. For the ancestors never stopped speaking. It is we who stopped listening. Every creature in nature has its rhythm and place. Insects are no different. They live by patterns, following instincts that have been passed down since the beginning of time. Ants move in disciplined lines, building their colonies underground. Flies hover where there is decay. Moths seek light in the darkness. Beetles bury themselves in the soil. All of this is natural, and when it happens as it should, there is nothing unusual about it. But when these creatures begin to appear in ways that do not fit their natural rhythm, when their presence feels intrusive, excessive, or out of order, it is no longer a coincidence. It is a sign, it is a signal that you must pay attention, because it often points towards something far deeper than the physical eye can see. This is the difference between ordinary appearances and those connected to witchcraft. If a fly enters your home when food is left uncovered, it follows nature. But if flies appear in swarms without reason, circling spaces where no food or waste is found, then it becomes something else. If moths gather around a flame on a summer night, that is expected. But if they enter a bedroom repeatedly night after night, targeting a specific corner or hovering near a person, then it is not random. If ants enter a kitchen in search of sugar, this is normal. But if they appear in sacred spaces, like prayer areas or bedrooms where nothing attracts them, then you must question why. This is where awareness matters. Many people look only at the surface and explain away everything with convenience. But the wise look deeper. They know that when insects move against their nature, it is because another force is influencing them. And often, that force is the disturbance of witchcraft or negative intentions directed into a person's life. The manipulation of energy is rarely invisible. It always leaves signs, and insects, being so sensitive to vibration, become drawn into these manipulations, revealing them to those who are paying attention. This is why, throughout history, people studied not only which insects appeared, but also how and where they appeared. The location, the timing, the numbers, all of these were part of the message. For example, a single beetle crawling into a home may be ignored, but a trail of beetles moving persistently toward the same spot was considered a message, a sign that something dark was rooted in that space. A single moth near a lamp is natural, but multiple moths targeting a person's resting place again and again carried deeper meaning. These patterns were not dismissed. They were studied as warnings, signs of imbalance, signals of energies interfering with the harmony of life. It is important to understand this difference, because not every insect is a warning, and not every appearance is connected to witchcraft. Nature still acts according to its own order, but witchcraft disturbs that order, and when it does, insects respond unnaturally. Learning to decode this difference is what protects you. It allows you to separate ordinary life from spiritual interference. It teaches you not to live in fear of every small insect, but to be discerning, to observe with clarity, to know when the natural becomes unnatural. And this awareness is not only about insects, it is about life. Darkness often hides behind the ordinary, pretending to be normal, blending into the everyday. But those who are awake recognize when the ordinary bends into the unusual. They see when patterns shift, when timing is too precise, when numbers become too extreme. This awareness allows them to respond before harm grows deeper. Insects are simply one of the clearest reflections of this principle. So when you see them, ask yourself, are they behaving according to nature, or are they appearing in ways that feel out of place? Are they drawn by natural causes, or is their presence a mirror of spiritual disturbance? The answer is often clear to the one who is willing to pause and reflect. The unseen world always leaves traces in the seen, and insects, small as they are, often become the first to carry those traces. They may seem insignificant, but when their presence defies nature, they are not ordinary anymore. They are messengers revealing what is hidden. And those who learn to read these signs will never again mistake witchcraft for coincidence. When insects appear as warnings, the question is not only why they are there, but also what you should do in response. Awareness is the first step, but awareness without action leaves you vulnerable. Nature does not speak for no reason. When it shows you the signs, it is calling you to prepare, to cleanse, to protect. And this is where many people fail. They see the insects, they feel the uneasiness, yet they do nothing. They brush it aside, waiting until the disturbance grows stronger, until the harm is harder to reverse. But protection must begin the moment the signs appear. The first step is always cleansing. Darkness thrives in spaces where neglect is present. Just as stagnant water attracts mosquitoes, stagnant energy attracts more negativity. Begin by clearing your physical environment. Clean your home, remove clutter, open the windows, and allow fresh air to circulate. This is not just about tidiness. It is about shifting the vibration of your space, breaking the heaviness that witchcraft tries to settle into. When your surroundings are clean and alive, energy flows freely again. Insects drawn unnaturally to disturbances lose their hold, because the balance begins to return. But cleansing is not only external, it is internal. Witchcraft often seeks to attack the mind first, planting fear, confusion, or despair. If you allow these emotions to take root, you strengthen the very energy that was sent against you. This is why spiritual practices are essential. Prayer, meditation, chanting, or simply sitting in silence while focusing on your breath. These are not rituals of weakness, they are shields of strength. They center you. They remind you that no force can have power over you unless you allow it. When your inner world is steady, insects may still appear as messengers, but they cannot unsettle you because your spirit is guarded. The next step is creating protection. In many traditions, people have used salt, herbs, fire, or incense to shield themselves and their homes. These practices may look different across cultures, but the purpose is the same: to set boundaries. Just as a fence keeps animals from entering a garden, these protective actions set limits against unseen forces. Whether it is sprinkling salt at your doorway, burning sage to purify the air, or placing water in corners to absorb heavy energy, the act itself is a declaration. You are not open to darkness. You are not welcoming it in. What matters most is intention. Witchcraft works through directed intention, and protection must answer with stronger intention. Every word of prayer, every breath of meditation, every act of cleansing carries power when it is done with focus. The insects may come, the signs may appear, but they cannot control you when your intention is firm. This is what breaks the cycle, what keeps the disturbance from rooting itself deeper into your life. At the same time, do not fall into the trap of fear. Fear is the food of witchcraft. It weakens your spirit and strengthens the very forces you are trying to resist. When insects appear as warnings, take them seriously, but do not panic. See them as guides, as messengers helping you to see what is hidden. Respond with clarity, not chaos. Respond with strength, not trembling. This mindset alone transforms the way you face spiritual challenges. There will also be times when the insects disappear after you act, and times when they return again, as if testing your resolve. Do not grow tired. Protection is not something you do once and forget. It is a way of living. It is about constantly keeping your space clean, your mind sharp, and your spirit strong. Just as you lock your doors every night to guard against intruders, you must also guard your spirit daily. This consistency is what keeps you untouchable. When you live with this awareness, insects stop being seen as nuisances. They become part of your guidance system, part of the language of life itself. You no longer dismiss them, and you no longer fear them. You read their appearance, you act on their message, and you grow stronger because of it. The presence of insects may warn you of witchcraft, but your response determines the outcome. If you ignore them, you open yourself to harm. If you fear them, you weaken your defenses. But if you listen, cleanse, protect, and remain steady, then what was meant to disturb you becomes what awakens you. And in that awakening, you realize the truth: nothing hidden can overcome the one who chooses to live in light.